to You Cook, I'll Bake, the perfect show for the imperfect chef. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Andrea, and today we are celebrating Independence Day. The 4th of July means a great deal to us. It's a lot about getting together, celebrating with family, and watching fireworks, definitely, mainly eating.
So today we're going to be making some food fireworks here in the kitchen.
Boom.
I'm going to be making a delicious peach pie because after all, we are a couple of Georgia peaches.
You know it.
And there ain't nothing quite as American as pie.
That's right. And I am going to be making some beautiful baked ribs that are smoky, sticky, and fall off the bone. You're going to love them.
But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to that channel. Give us a thumbs up on the video. Follow us on all the social media channels at You Cook, I'll Bake. And don't forget, you can get all the recipes from this episode and previous ones at YouCookI'llBake.com.
There's tons of pro tips on there as well. So, you ready?
Yep, let's
I'm
get
ready.
ready to crumble.
Let's get ready to crumble. I'm ready to start my ribs, and the ribs are going to take about 3 hours to cook, so I want to go ahead and get them prepped and in the oven. But there's one major step that you really need to do when prepping any form of ribs. I've got some baby backs here, and on the back side of the ribs, there's something called silver skin. It's like a membrane that holds all the bones together in the body, but when I'm cooking the ribs, I really want my ribs to fall off the bone. So we're actually going to try and remove that membrane right now. The most important thing is to remember that it should come off in one fell swoop. If it doesn't, just work at it. It's okay. And if it doesn't come off immediately, or if it's a little too slippery, use a paper towel or a kitchen towel to grab hold of it to pull it off. I'm going to show you how that's done now. I've got a paring knife, and I'm going to go in underneath the membrane, just barely under the membrane, and make a little slit. There we go. I use my paring knife very carefully, just kind of coax that membrane apart from the bone. Then I'm going to grab my paper towel. And it should just come straight off. Look at that! Look how perfect that is. I cannot guarantee that it will come off this quick, this well every time, but it did. So there you go. And that's all I need to take off. You can see that the membrane is gone. Now the bones are somewhat exposed, and as the cooking process is going on, those bones will just kind of shrivel up. The meat will just get all nice and tender and fall apart. To season the meat, I do things just a little bit backwards. So what I'm gonna start with is just a wet rub. And what I have here in this bowl is mayonnaise, molasses, and maple syrup, along with 2 tablespoons of mesquite powder. Now, I've mentioned mesquite powder before in the past, and I'll show it to you again. This is the mesquite powder that I use. It's a great sweetener, but at the same time, it gives a nice smoky flavor to anything that you're cooking. So in that bowl, that's what I have. And for my dry rub, I have salt, black pepper, garlic, cumin, let's see, smoked paprika, onion, onion powder, ginger, cayenne pepper, all kinds of different things that just kind of go together. And I'm gonna let that sit for a second as I put my wet rub on first. I know that sounds weird, but I'm putting the wet rub on first, and then afterwards I'm gonna put the dry rub on. You'll see what it looks like. And you really want to coat every ounce of this rack of ribs. You really want to get a nice thin coat on everything. I am going to reserve about 1/4 cup of my wet rub and a couple of tablespoons of my dry rub to make a little finishing sauce, if you will. The molasses in this mixture, along with the mayonnaise and the maple syrup, are really going to help to break down some of the fibers and some of the tissue in the ribs. It's going to make them like fall off the bone. They're going to be so delicious. I cannot wait for you to have them. And now for the dry rub. Don't be stingy with this rub. A lot of this is gonna cook into the meat, so don't be stingy with it. Put a hefty layer on there, it'll be really good. And you want it on both sides. So important, both sides. I'm gonna tap off some of it, use that for the sides, and then for the bottom. There's a little bit more on top. You can see those salt crystals, they're so good. My ribs are all seasoned. I'm gonna scoot this over, and I have my pan. Now this is just a regular cookie sheet, nothing spectacular, but in it I've got 2 slices of white onion. I'm using a Georgia Vidalia onion because once again, I am a Georgia peach. So we're gonna put some onion down on the bottom. This is a really great aromatic that we're gonna use in the cooking process. Just a short layer, nothing spectacular, but I do have a secret ingredient, beer. So I'm using today Reformation Brewery. This is a local brew for us. Remember, we've mentioned it in the past. In this day and age, shop local. Reformation is an awesome local brewery here. Really nice craft beers, and we really love them. But that's the one I'm using, and I'm gonna pour it in the bottom of this pan. I'm not gonna pour a ton. It's probably half the beer, but this is also gonna give it a really nice, this is going to be a really nice just aromatics that's going to help to steam and cook your ribs. Just on top of these onions, I have a little rack. Fits perfectly. If you don't have one of these, use a roasting pan. And to be honest with you, if you don't have one of these, just put it in the pan. It's not an issue. I'm gonna take my ribs. They go directly on top. And I'm gonna cover it with foil, and it goes into the oven at 275 degrees for 2.5 hours. So low and slow, 2.5 hours, 275. And then right at that 2.5 hour mark, we're gonna pull the foil off and then crank that temperature up to 350 degrees for 30 minutes. Once that's done, I have another little finishing sauce that we're gonna put on it and broil it to make it really nice and crispy on top. It's gonna be amazing. I can't wait for you to try it.
Now to move on to our peach pie. In our last episode, Andrea handled making the gluten-free dough for the empanadas. Today, we're going to do a little bit of a different rendition of a gluten-free pastry dough. So for our crust for the pie, I've got here gluten-free flour, shortening, and cold water. We're gonna put these together into our stand mixer with the paddle and get it nice and put together just until we can form a ball to roll out our dough. You don't want to overwork it. You'd rather it be wet than dry. So let's get it going. I'm going to pour in our gluten-free flour with the sea salt, our shortening, pour in our cold water. Now we're going to put in our butter. All right, we grab that dough out of there, and you can see it is very nice. It is perfect. It is not too wet. It is not too dry. It is nice and moldable. The shortening helps a lot in this process. So we're just going to go ahead and start flattening it out. We're gonna sprinkle a little bit more gluten-free flour on the top and roll it out. As you can see, as I have flattened it with my hands, I've gotten it already into a nice round shape. just have more control when I'm using my hands. But now to finish it, get it nice and even. Get it nice and even, we can use our rolling pin. Now we're going to lay it in our pie pan. I have already coated my pie pan in some canola oil. I'm going to just separate my crust, make sure that it isn't sticking anywhere to the board or on the edges. I've got a nice big spatula here so it can reach down into the middle. All right, feels nice and loose. So I'll roll it up on my hand. If it starts falling apart, it's okay. We'll get it in there and we'll reshape it. It cracked a little bit there in the middle, but that's the good thing about dough is we can just reform it. So I'm going to press it down into the pan. Fix that little crack. There it is, all sealed up. So it is really the right size already. There's not a whole lot to cut off. A little bit fell off the edges. That's fine. I'm molding around the edges just a little bit to make sure that I don't have any parts that are too thin. I'm just kind of squinching them together. And I do have a little bit of dough that fell off that I can fill in if there are any gaps. And there you have it, a nice rustic, as Andrea would say, pie crust, gluten-free. We are going to put this in the freezer while we make our pie filling. And now to move on to our peach filling. I have here 2 jars of sliced peaches that have been drained. I have sugar, regular granulated sugar, and brown sugar. I have flour, cinnamon, and vanilla extract. We are going to combine all of these things together. We sprinkle on our cinnamon and our flour and add in our sugar. Look at that. Look at that little round of brown sugar. It's so cute. Crumble. Whoop. No man left behind. And sugar. I have tagged this in one of our previous episodes, this little meat masher. It comes in handy for so many different things. Right now I'm going to use it to combine and mix all of our ingredients while chopping up the peaches. And there you have it, our peach pie filling. So let's go grab that pie crust. We went to grab the pie crust out of the freezer, but forgot one little thing. The top of the pie. We didn't make a top. So, imperfect chef, here, right at you. Now we are making the top for our pie crust. Essentially, all we did was we redid what we did earlier. We made another batch of that pie dough, and we've rolled it out. I am now taking a star-shaped cookie cutter, and I am cutting out some stars. And then we're gonna layer on top of the pie, of the peaches, once we put them into the crust, and it's going to be lovely and delicious all at the same time. And now to put our peach filling into the pie crust and top it with all of our stars. Very simple process. Just pour the peach filling, which we have had this in the fridge, keeping it nice and cold while we were making that pie crust topping. All right, get all that juice out of there. Smells so good. We're going to even it out, push those peaches down into the crust. And now for the fun part, all the stars. Just start layering them around the edges. And finally, we're going to top the pie with our egg wash. Now this is just 1 beaten egg with some milk that we have mixed together. And we're going to drain it off a little bit and paint it onto our stars. Now we're going to put our pie into the oven at 400 degrees for about 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes is up, we're going to reduce it to 375 for another 20 minutes.
The ribs have been cooking for 2.5 hours, and I'm excited to see what they look like. Now keep in mind, this is not the finished product. These guys need to go back into the oven for 30 minutes at a higher temperature, just to kind of make sure all the sugars and the molasses and the maple syrup really caramelize really well, because these have really just been baking for 2.5 hours. So I'm gonna stick them back in the oven after I do one special thing. Let's take a look, see what they look like. Woo! Ooh. Oh happiness. Oh, happy day. I don't need this foil anymore. It's a rib facial. I don't know if you can tell, but now there's 2 racks. They don't multiply in the oven. I'm just letting you know that. I actually had already stuck some in the oven for us right before, just to make sure that timing wise this worked out really well. So check this out. What you can see is, you might be able to see it. Woo, that's hot. See the little bone right here sticking out? That means that these guys are really starting to really pull away from the meat. Oh, they're gonna be so great. And when you see the bones start to turn white, you know that you've got something good happening. Now what I've done is I took the wet rub and the dry rub and I mixed them together. It's what was left over, and I've made this really, really yummy little sauce. It's kind of gelatinous sauce. Now I'm gonna take just a spoonful, put it right on top of the ribs. And I'm just going to spread it out over the ribs. And as it cooks at a higher temperature, the molasses, the maple syrup, everything will really, really caramelize really well. Should get pretty dark and absolutely delicious. And back in the oven they go. 350 degrees for another 30 minutes, or just until the top is really nice and golden brown. It's gonna be amazing. I can't wait for you to taste it. The ribs are done.
They smell, look, everything amazing.
I'm telling you, they're so good. So I stuck them back in the oven. You'll remember at 350 degrees for another 30 minutes, just to get a really nice caramelization on the top, and it looks lovely. It's amazing. We're gonna cut them up and then taste and celebrate with all kinds of the fireworks.
We've pulled the pie out, as you can see here. It is still hot. I ain't gonna touch it. But our nice, cute little stars on the top. We did sprinkle it with some cinnamon sugar when it was close to being done, and everything's just about ready to go. So let's get the ribs cut up.
We'll get the ribs cut up. Just before we do that, I want to also tell you about 2 other things that we made. These are side dishes. You can find the recipes on youcookalbake.com. I made a coleslaw with Brussels sprouts. There's red onion in there. There's apple in there. There's pumpkin seeds in there. Radishes. Really beautiful radishes that I got from a garden when I was visiting my mom. Shredded carrots. And then I made a really lovely dressing, coleslaw dressing. I choose to go and buy coleslaw dressings when I'm in a hurry, but man, this one is insanely good. It's so yummy. And then Danielle, you made some baked beans.
Yes.
Super simple.
So simple. Just a can of Bush's. Threw it in there with some garlic, some minced onion, some ground mustard, some bacon, a little bit of brown sugar, and a little bit of, not a secret ingredient, but a little bit of syrup.
Oh,
so
there you go.
If you have molasses or if you have maple syrup, you can use that. I didn't. I just had regular pancake syrup, so just a little squirt of that, and let it cook up.
There you go. So this is our 4th of July meal. I'm going to cut up the ribs, and we're going to give it a taste. There you go. We're done. 4th of July dinner, ready to go. Ribs, awesome baked beans, beautiful coleslaw, and a delicious peach pie. Gluten-free, lactose-free, happiness, all kinds of goodness. So you ready to taste?
Let's taste.
Let's do this. What are you going in for first?
Meat.
Ribs.
Meat first.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Fall off the bone.
Super good. While we're at it, don't forget, like, subscribe, follow, share, get your recipes, youcookalbake.com.
You're going to want this one. Oh, yeah. So yummy.
All right.
I want some pie.
Here we go.
Peach pie. Cheers again. Oh yeah, just enough sweet. Love the cinnamon. And peaches held up really well. And that
crust isn't too thick. It's just enough to support it and give it that shell. But it's mainly about the peaches. And it's really fresh. It's not like out of the stuffing out of a can, which I ain't hating on it. We use it for some of our pies, but this one is really, really fresh.
Oh yeah.
Nice. All right.
Well, that's it for us for 4th
That's
of
a wrap.
July. Thank you so much.
Hope you have a great Independence Day.
Absolutely. Go see the fireworks. Enjoy time with family.
Yes.
And we'll see you next time. You
Bye.
cook, I'll bake. Peace out. Wait. Hot 9 jugs. Who that is? Who that is?
Upside down and inside out. I'm about to show all you folks what it's all about. But it's time for to get on the mic. Make this my body hype. Bring it back to the old school. Cause I'm an old fool who's so cool. If you want to get with me, I'll show you the way. Whoop that is.
I don't know the words.
Whoop that is. Shakalaka, 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 shakalaka.
Now I'm sweating. You were recording? And trust baby back ribs. Baby back, baby back. Oh, goodness. Oh, I love it so much. It makes me so happy.